Reddit. I broke the frame of our wedding photo for the third time today, not on purpose. My hand just shook when I was dusting the dresser in the living room. The glass cracked exactly in the middle, separating our smiling 25-year-old faces. I picked up the pieces, and then I sat on the floor for a long time, looking at this picture, at this crack, and I understood, it's not just a broken frame, it's a metaphor. The point of no return, the story I have to tell, because it's not about a happy Doyle, but about how you can live next to each other for 20 years and find yourself in an absolute desert. And it started because we didn't break up then. Do you know those stories where people are on the verge of breaking up? We had such a moment. A year after university, I am Max, a rebel with a guitar and dreams of a big stage, but working as a clerk in my father's office. She is Lisa, a talented but incredibly anxious graphic designer who dreamed of freelancing, but got stuck in a stuffy advertising agency. We lived in a tiny rented apartment, always arguing about money, about the future, about how our dreams were extinguished under the yoke of must. One day, after a particularly heated argument, where we shouted out all the accumulated resentments and frustrations, Lisa, sobbing, said, "I can't do this anymore. I don't see us in the future. Maybe. Is it time for us to disperse?" I remember that horror, cold, penetrating. I loved her, madly. But I was afraid of losing her no less than I was afraid of losing myself in this gray reality. And then I made the very choice. I didn't let her go. I begged. I was talking about love, that we could handle it, that I would change, that we would change. I offered a compromise that seemed like a salvation. Let's not break what we have. Come on. Let's build stability. Careers, home, family, and dreams. Dreams can wait. When there will be a foundation. I saw in her eyes not hope, but tired surrender. She nodded. Okay, Max. Let's try it. It wasn't our marriage. It was a truce. The beginning of the great illusion. We started to build. I persuaded my father to give me a more responsible and better paid position in his company, burying the guitar under stacks of reports. Lisa, having overcome her anxiety, left her hated job. She opened not a dream studio, but a small but stable wedding invitation design business. It's in demand, she said without fire in her eyes. We bought an apartment, not the one they dreamed of with a workshop for her and a studio for me, but a practical one in a good neighborhood. A daughter, Sonia, was born. Joy, but also a new round of commitment. From the outside we were ideal, a successful couple. It's a beautiful house. Dear daughter. Stable income. We have learned to play our roles flawlessly. I am a reliable earner. Suits, business meetings, career growth. The guitar was gathering dust in the closet. Sometimes, after drinking too much at a corporate party, I could play a couple of chords from my colleagues to the applause on duty. It felt like a violation of his memory. Lisa is a caring hostess and businesswoman. She created amazing invitations, but it was a craft, not an art. Her anxiety transformed into perfectionism in everyday life and overprotection of Sonia. The fire of creativity that I once adored was now barely smoldering, aimed at choosing the perfect wallpaper for the living room. Twinner were a well-established mechanism. Joint trips to school, parent-teacher conferences, visits to relatives, rare scheduled vacations. The conversations are about sleep, about repairs, about bills. Sex is on Saturdays if you're not too tired. Quarrels are quiet, careful, and quickly extinguished so as not to rock the boat. We became experts at avoiding anything that might remind us of the young, fearless but impractical people we were. We buried them under layers of responsibility and common sense. Cracks appeared gradually like mold on the wallpaper in the corner. The silence became booming. We could be silent for hours in the same room. Not because there's nothing to say, but because they were afraid to say the wrong thing. We were afraid to touch the delicate balance of our lies. Sometimes I caught her staring out the window, so full of longing that I wanted to scream. But I didn't say anything. What could I say? I'm sorry for killing your dreams. I'm sorry that I killed my own. Envy is like poison. When Sonia was 15, her friend, the daughter of an artist, invited us to her mother's vernissage. Lisa looked at free, bright people, at bold canvases, and I saw something wild and hungry flash in her eyes and then go out. Then, at home, she suddenly said, I could do that. Earlier, it didn't sound like a rebuke to me, but like a eulogy to myself. I replied with something comfortingly practical about stability and reliability, but the cats were scratching inside me. I envied these artists their recklessness, their audacity to be themselves. 3. Sonia, the mirror. Our daughter has grown incredibly careful. She was afraid to take risks, try new things, and chose reliable options. Once, when she refused to go to a language camp, "What if you don't like it? What if I can't handle it?" Lisa exploded. "Don't you dare be afraid of life. Try it, make a mistake, live." There was such pain and despair in her voice that Sonia burst into tears, and I realized that Lisa was not shouting at her daughter. She was yelling at herself from 20 years ago, at the girl who too easily agreed to not be afraid and stopped living. The disaster did not come with a scandal. It came with the soft click of a car door. Lisa had a minor accident. No one was seriously injured, but her car was taken to a service station for a week. And so, on this ordinary morning, I offered to give her a ride to the workshop where now, in addition to invitations, she carefully began to take small branding orders. Her small, belated concession to a dream. The road was silent. The radio was playing some kind of faceless pop music. I turned onto a familiar street, to her workshop, located in the basement of an old house. I parked. "Thank you," Lisa said softly, and reached for the door handle. At that moment, a man came out of the entrance opposite. About 50 years old, in a worn leather jacket, with a gray beard and a cello case on his back. He was humming to himself, walking lightly, smiling absently at the morning sun, completely oblivious to us. I saw Lisa freeze. His hand remained on the handle. She didn't look at this man as a stranger. Her look, it was the look of a drowning man who saw a ship passing by. There was such unbearable thirst and fent, such an dull familiar pain, such an bottomless regret, that I felt physically ill. She looked at him the way she would have looked at her unlived life, the kind of Lisa who could be a free, sought-after artist rather than a careful artisan in a basement. The kind of Max who could play guitar not in a closet, but on stage. The man disappeared around the corner. The music from the radio was replaced by a heartbreakingly banal advertisement. Lisa shuddered, as if waking up. She opened the door abruptly. "See you tonight," she said monotonously, and walked quickly to the entrance of her workshop without looking back. Her shoulders were unnaturally straight. At that moment, looking after her, I realized a terrible thing. We had already broken up not now. We broke up 20 years ago, when I persuaded her to choose stability instead of risk, when we buried our real selves under the slabs of practicality. We didn't break up physically, but our souls parted at that very moment of surrender. All these years we've been a shadow of the couple that could have been. We were actors playing happy marriage on a stage that we ourselves had built as a prison. The days after that morning passed like thick tar. We avoided talking, avoided looking at each other. The atmosphere in the house was taut, like a string about to break. Sonia, who had come home from university for the weekend, felt this and looked at us uneasily. And so, this morning, after I broke the frame and sat for an hour on the floor among the shards in the past, Lisa came into the living room. She saw the scene, me, the pieces, the photo with the crack between our faces. She wasn't surprised. She didn't scream. She just sat down on the sofa opposite. "I saw your guitar in the closet last week," she said softly. "When was the last time you played it?" I tried to remember. "For real, for yourself? About 10 years ago? 15? And you? When was the last time you painted something that wasn't custom made, just because I couldn't help but draw?" I asked, looking at the broken glass. She shook her head. "I don't remember. A long time ago." There was silence, but it was a different silence. Not the oppressive silence of the enemies, but the silence after the battle that both lost. "We've been kidding ourselves all these years, Max," Lisa said. Her voice was tired but clear, without the usual anxious note. "We thought we were building a house, and they were building a crypt, for the real me." "I know," I breathed. "I saw it. In your eyes. In the car, then. You looked at that man with the cello like a ghost of what I could have been, who we could be." She nodded. Tears finally began to flow down her face, but she didn't try to wipe them away. I was jealous of him, madly, his freedom, his lightness, his life. And then I realized that it wasn't him I was envying. I envy that Lisa who died when I told you then, "Okay, let's try." We buried her alive, Max. Together. I got up from the floor, went to the sofa, sat down next to her, but without touching her. The distance between us was wider than ever. What now? I asked, knowing the answer. Knowing him with all my being, now. We're releasing these shadows, Lisa said, looking directly at that cracked photo. We're over 40, Max. Isn't it too late? I don't know, but continue like this. It's worse than death. It's not life anymore. This is a reprieve. She didn't say, let's get divorced. She was talking about a divorce from the illusion, about the termination of the performance, about admitting defeat not in marriage but in our attempt to replace real life with its safe, lifeless copy. We haven't submitted the documents yet. We still live in the same house. But everything has changed. The curtain fell, the scenery collapsed. We finally see each other real talent. Tired, wounded, regretful, but alive. For the first time in 20 years, we started talking, for real, about who we were, about who we've become, about fear, about losses, about guilt, not only in front of each other but also in front of ourselves. Shay says he wants to sell the invitation-only business. Take a break, finally try to draw, not for the money, for myself, to look for the remnants of that girl under the layers of reliability. Shinny, I'm talking about the fact that I submitted a letter of resignation from my father's company. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll try to teach guitar to children. Maybe I'll just play for myself. For the first time in 20 years, I don't have a plan. Only emptiness. And a strange feeling. Relief. We are going to have difficult conversations with Sonia. Division of property. Misunderstanding of relatives. How? Everything was so good with you. The bitterness and pain will still come in waves, but something new is breaking through them. There is no hope for us. Hope for yourself, individually. Reddit, I do not know if I will find my inner musician. Will Lisa find her artist? But I do know one thing. We've finally stopped pretending. We stopped living someone else's life. We recognize the collapse not of marriage, it collapsed a long time ago, but of our great self-deception. And in this void, among the fragments of our old selves and broken frames, there is a chance to collect something new, something real, even if it's not together. Sometimes the scariest choice is not to break up. The scariest choice is to once stay and slowly die. We made it 20 years ago. Today we choose to live. Each in his own way, at a high price. But to live. But a P.S. The wedding photo is on the dresser. I didn't change the glass. The rift between us is the truth of our lives. Maybe someday I'll put another picture next to it. The person I'm going to become. If I can find him, of course. The search is just beginning.